This video is for those that measure a motorcycle's worth by how useful it is, not how much horsepower it has or how quick it is. It's about 4 older, carburetted, Japanese-made sport touring bikes that are proven and very reliable everyday workhorses. And every bike mentioned in this video is renowned for being pretty much indestructible and able to cover a large amount of kilometres with only routine servicing involved. So if you're on a budget and looking for a bike that you can ride from dawn to dusk with a tad of sporting ability thrown in, you've clicked on the right video. First up is the Yamaha FJ series, which first appeared on the scene in 1984 as an 1100cc inline 4-cylinder. Just 2 years later, the bike was significantly improved and upgraded, and it then became the FJ 1200, a bike which is often overlooked even though it remained in production right up until the mid-1990s. While the 1200 only had 5 more horsepower than the 1100, it had substantially more low-down and mid-range torque. Although the FJ 1200 was indeed a very fast bike, even by today's standards, Yamaha focused more on versatility than outright performance. But having said that, the FJ 1200 does have exceptionally good top gear roll-on acceleration. The bike featured a very well designed frame mounted fairing, which worked a treat. It also had excellent passenger grab handles on either side of the seat. Combined with the very torquey nature of the engine, its adjustable front and rear suspension and a large capacity fuel tank, the bike was, and still is, quite a good 2-up touring motorcycle. All you need to do is add some luggage. Considering the bike is a 1200cc, it's not physically large. It's pretty narrow, its seat height is also low at 780mm, and its handlebars are quite high as well. This adds up to a fairly upright riding position, and although it is surprisingly quite a heavy motorcycle, pretty much any rider can easily ride a Yamaha FJ 1200. As far as looks go, it is very streamlined, without too much going on, and there are no sharp angles like many bikes have these days. As far as looks go, I give this bike 10 out of 10. The Yamaha FJ 1200 is, in my opinion, probably the best air-cooled 4-cylinder motorcycle to ever come out of Japan. If you can think of a better one, put it in the comments and enlighten me as to why you think it is better. Even by today's standards, it is an excellent machine, and one of the best all-round road bikes that Yamaha has ever manufactured. Probably the only negative things I can say about this bike is the front suspension is a bit spongy, but this can easily be addressed with the addition of progressive springs. And although its engine is relatively simple, being air-cooled, unfortunately for most home mechanics, its 4-cylinder engine has 16 valves, which are all adjusted with shims. Despite the many years they were produced, Yamaha continually improved the FJ 1200, and these motorcycles are still very competitive against most modern motorcycles on the road today. In 1996, Suzuki released the Bandit 1200S, with the S designation referring to its frame-mounted half fairing. This bike was an instant success, and for very good reasons. It was a pretty cheap, big-bore motorcycle to buy. It was fast, reliable, and easy to ride. It had Suzuki's absolutely bulletproof and incredibly flexible inline 4-cylinder oil-cooled engine. For the 2001 model year, the bike was upgraded with better carbies, brakes, electronics, and a new fairing with twin headlights, which provides fairly smooth wind flow and reasonable weather protection. But it still retained the home mechanic friendly screw and lock nut adjustment on the valves. In my opinion, the 2001 to 06 model years are the peak of the carby models. In 2007, its 1156cc engine was increased to 1,255 cc's, and it became liquid cooled instead of oil cooled, and it was also now fuel injected. But like the previous model, the engine still had a very flat torque curve, which is what you want in any sports tourer. But unfortunately, valve adjustment was now done by means of shims. All the Suzuki Bandits feature a good seat, an effective fairing and a fairly upright riding position. Combined with its stump-pulling low-down torque, this makes any Bandit a very good touring bike. If you so desired, you can basically just chuck them into top gear and leave them there all day. They are a fantastic, cheap bike for any type of road riding you might want to do. Its suspension, however, is probably not the best, but still its handling is quite adequate up to mildly aggressive speeds. And if you think this somewhat budget-built bike is slow, think again. The Suzuki Bandit is capable of reaching a top speed of at least 235 km per hour. The Kawasaki GT-R 1000 was made from 1986 to 2006. While it is a fairly large and pretty top-heavy motorcycle, it still has plenty going for it. Its styling is, of course, somewhat dated, but the bike does have absolutely beautiful wheels, no matter what model year you buy. It features a very large fairing and screen, which does offer superb protection for its rider. Better in fact than many modern motorcycles. It also features a shaft final drive, a supremely comfortable seat, and the excellent non-colour matched panniers really suit the bike too. In some cases, colour matched panniers just look silly. It also has a massive 28.5 litre fuel tank, and quite good, although somewhat slow handling, which probably isn't helped a lot by its 18-inch front wheel. It was, for its time, a remarkably well-designed touring bike, and it is still a pretty good tourer to this day. Back in the 80s, it was substantially cheaper than BMW's equivalent, the K100 LT, and in many comparison road tests of the era, the Kawasaki came out on top in almost every single one of them. Its 997cc liquid-cooled inline 4-cylinder engine produced quite a bit of horsepower, and it has exceptional mid-range power, making it a very competent motorcycle. One road test I read on this bike said it was a slow bike. Well, they must have had tendinitis in the wrist or something, because take it from someone who has ridden one, this bike hauls ass. Did that look like a slow bike to you? Although for some reason, apparently the European models had less power and less torque. The bike has pretty tall gearing, and while it is reasonably happy to cruise around at low revs, to get the best out of it, it does require you to rev the engine a bit, and change down if passing, because its top gear roll-ons are not the quickest. Personally, I prefer to change down when passing anyway, so I don't see this as a negative. Considering its size, it has a very respectable top speed. If you're game enough, that is, because big fairings like this and high speeds are a really bad mix. Its handling at low speeds can be a bit tricky too, due to the bike's top-heavy nature, but at highway speeds handling is very predictable, although it does tend to wallow a tad when pushed hard through corners. But this is pretty standard for any bike of its size and age. Its valves are adjusted by screw and lock nut adjusters as well. Bonus. It was produced for 2 decades, which pretty much says it all. So if you're after a cheap, reliable and relatively easy touring bike to maintain, you just can't go wrong with a Kawasaki GT-R 1000. Just be very careful when turning one around in your driveway, particularly if it's full of fuel. A bike which is quite similar to the previous bike is Honda's ST1100, or Pan-European. Although its engine is quite different, being a liquid-cooled V4, which is mounted lengthways in the frame, it produces similar horsepower to the Kawasaki GT-R and also offers similar rider weather protection, with its large fairing. It also has a shaft final drive and a huge 28 litre fuel tank. Honda's ST1100 model ran for 12 years, and during that time it earned itself a reputation amongst touring motorcycles for its practicality and reliability, which is just as well, because as good as the bike is, it is not for everyone. Home mechanics may not appreciate the bike all that much, because its fully integrated fairing pretty much encloses the entire motorcycle. There is just so much bodywork to remove before you can even access the engine. And once all this bodywork is eventually removed, there is just hoses and shit all over the place. The petrol tank is actually here, and this is the airbox. And with 4 camshafts, 4 carbies and 16 valves, which are all adjusted using shims, it is just not the easiest bike to work on. The engine itself, however, is absolutely marvellous and has a reputation for being bulletproof. It produces good power from idle right up to its red line, which is quite low at 8,000 RPM. It delivers turbine-like power, and for touring, it is one of the best motorcycle engines ever designed. It's damn near perfect. By anyone's standards though, it is a large and hefty bike, but they are surprisingly easy to ride, even when riding them very slow. No doubt this is aided by the fact that the fuel tank is mounted down low under the seat. For such a big bike, it's truly amazing how easily you can throw them around. And the bike is no slouch either. In fact, any half-decent rider on a ST1100 would have no problem at all dragging off a less skilled sports bike rider in the twisties. They honestly do perform that well. To my eye, and many others, it may not be one of the best looking motorcycles due to that fully integrated fairing. Most motorcyclists do like to see a motor, but as far as riding one goes, they are the bee's knees. They were used by many different police forces all over the world. This alone speaks for itself. If you're after a cheap, extremely reliable bike that you can ride all day in comfort, this is a very good motorcycle. The pre-1996 models only had a 28 amp alternator, so if you're looking to add electrical accessories, go for the later models, as the earlier alternators were known to fail if extra load was placed on them. The 1996 through to 2002 models were all upgraded with a 40 amp alternator. Also in 2002, the updated, more powerful, and to my eye better looking ST1300 fuel injected version first appeared in some countries. There's a channel I watch occasionally called Old Guy on a Bike. He's a retired gentleman named Jim, who rides a Honda ST1300 around Canada, towing a Mini-Mate motorcycle camping trailer. He's an excellent old dude and I enjoy the channel, and recommend it for a bit of easy watching. Cheers, and I hope you enjoyed the video.